Hey everybody, I'm Steve Smith, founder of Thoughtful Technologies. I worked in corporate for 25 years and then left about 10 years ago to start my own software company. Just wanted to jump on here for a few minutes and talk about what I've seen in IT, where I think we're at today, and where I think we're headed in the future. So when I first started in IT back in 1990, the corporate landscape was a lot simpler. It was primarily industrial computers, large mainframe servers, software that was accessed via a dumb terminal. And then come the mid-90s probably was when desktops and laptops started showing up. And fast forward to today, where we have all kinds of devices, Internet of Things, obviously the phones, and even from an internet perspective, the software models that exist today are much different than they were back in the early 90s. So all of that being said, the mechanisms are different, but the game is still the same. So back in the early 90s, companies would pay to own their hardware, they would pay to own their software, they would pay for maintenance, and that maintenance would entitle them to bug fixes and upgrades and the like and what have you. But then even during that time, there were different options that companies were offered to move their computing environments into an outsourcer, and that outsourcer would essentially offer to reduce the computing costs for a company for a period of time. And mind you, moving that workload is not trivial. Moving it from a company internally to an external source is not a small effort. So after all the work goes through and the customer moves their data and their compute over to an outsourcer, after 3 or 4 or 5 years, all of a sudden the costs are exorbitant. And now, surprise, surprise, the customer's unhappy because they're paying now as much as they were before, if not more. And then they decide, okay, well, we're going to move our workload back in-house. And again, not a trivial effort. Certainly easy business cases to be made, but from a bits and bytes perspective, not a trivial amount of work and significant amount of risk to the business as a result of moving these workloads back and forth. So during the course of that time, that was the game that was played for quite a while. Over the years, now the models have changed, and the types of licenses often change from a software perspective or a hardware perspective, and the terms regularly seem to change, and whether it be an enterprise license or a perpetual license or a yearly license or a subscription model, all of those things contribute and continue to contribute additional costs to the business. And from my perspective, part of the reason that I left and wanted to go start my own software company is it feels like there are costs that are just invented as it relates to IT. And maybe I'm naive, but it seems like a pretty simple equation in my head of buying hardware, buying software, and maintaining said hardware and said software. And over time, your costs, in my opinion, should stay the same or, certainly marginally go up. But the idea that there's always a moving target or the terms seem to always be changing, it just seems like an unnecessary approach to IT from a business perspective. So that's a large part of the reason that I got out of the traditional environment and went to start my own software company. I recently released a product I'm very proud of. And that product aims to consolidate a lot of business functions and ultimately save the customer of my company a lot of time and energy as well as cost, as all of those business functions are consolidated into one place. And currently we're offering that as a software as a service model, which is the current mechanism that most companies are using. But we're also open to moving that model on-prem and selling the software as a perpetual license. That's also something that we would be open to doing. And ultimately, at the end of the day, my goal is to bring back reasonable computing costs to customers and to businesses, and ultimately hope that savings is passed on then to the consumers, which is something that, quite frankly, we've really never seen through the course of the last 35 years. The premise was that it would be done better, faster, and cheaper. Better is arguable, faster is arguable, and cheaper never seemed to show up at all. So my hope is to partner with other companies that are like-minded, that want to really get a handle on their computing costs and their software costs, as well as their internal operations. The software that my company is offering, Bluetivity, is designed just for that, to increase communication efficiencies throughout an organization, to centralize all of the different functions, many of the different functions that businesses use today. And throughout my travels and discoveries, I know that many companies are doing this using shared drives or whatever the SaaS software is of the day for a handful of functions. But when I set out to create Bluetivity, I set out to create a tool that is ultimately going to be a one-stop shop for businesses small and large. So if that's something that interests you or your company, I would encourage everybody to go take a look. My website is www.thoughtfultechnologies.com, and the product is Bluetivity, and we hope to hear from you. Have a good day.